Welcome to Freddy's Huge Ask Podcast. Huge lives and the stories behind them. And now here's your host, Freddy Cruz.
Jennifer Fawcett teaches writing at Skidmore College. Her work has been published in Third Coast Magazine and Storybrink, and her debut novel, Beneath the Stairs, is one of the year's most anticipated novels, and she joins me right now.
Hi.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I want to start with your origin story and how growing up in rural East Ontario charted your journey toward becoming a writer.
That's a great question. Well, so I grew up in the country, and there's a lot of I've always been really fascinated by old places, and where I live, there are a lot of old places. I grew up on a farm, and so there was this sort of falling down barn, and there was another abandoned building sort of like down the street, and then beyond that, actually, I shouldn't say street, road, and then beyond that, in the middle of this cornfield, there was this small little stone building that was such a mystery to me. And finally, my parents told me that was the building where they used to store the bodies when the ground was too cold to bury them.
Oh my gosh.
I think I've always been really interested in abandoned places because there's just so much story there.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but was that place haunted? Like, did you go back, or did you go as a curious,
I never went in.
Kid go back and hang out there?
Well, the door it was sort of like the size of a garage, but it was made out of stone, and it was like way back off the road. But of course, I had to go and investigate it. So yeah, there's the door is totally locked. Like, you can't, except that there's like a hole in the side of the wall. So I like kind of poked my head in, and inside it's just empty, but there's like these 6 cubbies, let's call them, but they're like this size of a coffin. So I think that's sort of where some of my fascination with this sort of the stories and this idea of who was here, what happened here, trying to imagine sort of what these places would be like. I think that's probably the sort of like what fed that. Also, I was a kid. We had like 4 channels on the TV, and 3 of them were bad. And so I read a lot of books and just sort of always had a really active imagination and sort of just like had these stories spin around. And then the book that the house that this book is based on it's now gone, a real house that I went into when I was a kid. So yeah, I don't know if I just like live in a haunted area or something.
Where the red eyes come out at night when Jennifer is going for story ideas, and it says "Get out," but then Jennifer's like, "No."
But this is I sound like I'm like this brave person who goes into like all these scary places. I am the biggest chicken in the world. My imagination is far too active. So no, daylight visits only with friends.
Well, okay. So, I mean, have you ever experienced an encounter with something that could be construed as supernatural?
I haven't, but weirdly, it sort of followed me. After I left the country, I went to Toronto and lived there for over a decade. Went to university there. And I was in theater school, and the theater building at Ryerson University is the old pharmaceutical building. So people are going to think I'm like obsessed with dead bodies. I'm really not that macabre, but it's the old pharmaceutical building. And I used to stay there like late at night, like until like 11 o'clock at night. And it would just be me and a janitor. And there were all sorts of stories about this building being haunted. This is downtown Toronto. Because again, they used to store, I guess they had like a morgue there. And then I also worked at an old mansion in Toronto. It was a restaurant when I worked at it, but the staff changing area was up. It was like a 3-story building, but the top story was just like storage. And then at the very back, it's the old servants' quarters, was where the staff changed. And then the main two stories were where the restaurant was. And there used to be a weekly meeting of people who were like psychics, because they would go and they would sort of like channel the spirits. And there were all these stories about this place. The bathroom was supposed to be haunted. People would say, there's a little boy on the third floor and he's thirsty. Like, there's no boy on the third floor, it's empty. But one of my coworkers, this did not happen to me, but one of my coworkers, it's a bar, so super late at night, she was up in the staff area changing. It's probably like 2:00 in the morning, changing, and she's in the women's room, and she hears someone says, "Hey, what are you doing now?" She's like, "Oh, I think I'm just going to go home." And then she's like, "Wait a second. These are really creaky stairs. I didn't hear anybody come up. And the only other person in the building is the manager, who's downstairs." So she goes downstairs and she's like, "Did you just ask me what I was doing?" And the manager's like, "What? No."
No.
So it's like, so yeah, all this stuff, like, but that did not happen to me. So I'm, channeling.
Yeah, almost like you're a vessel, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love these stories and they terrify me.
Yeah, well, and that reminds me of my previous employer. There was Henry. Henry was a ghost that and I worked at a radio station, and Henry was a ghost that only the nighttime DJ and the promo marketing kids who drove the vans out to station events, they were the only ones who knew Henry. Not the morning show people, not me, not any of our people in management that worked during the office, not our salespeople. Henry only came around at night and on the weekends, and I never really believed in his existence until my buddy Tyler, who did nights there, told me about and you see in the background, if you're not watching on YouTube, in the background is like a glass record plaque. So he told me he tells the story of one of the record plaques falling to the ground really loud, and he was all by himself. And it's like, all right, dude. Yeah, maybe you're onto something. Maybe Henry is a thing.
See, this is the thing. Like I wrestled with this as I was writing this book. I don't know if ghosts are real. Like, I don't know. But I believe in the possibility. Like, I believe
something.
Yeah, it's the quote, there's more to heaven and earth than 'tis dreamt of in your philosophy, from Hamlet. Like, that quote really resonates with me, because I just feel in so many ways there's just more than we know.
Yeah.
So the possibility is there, but I have a young child, and like, there will come a time when he asks, "Are ghosts real?" And I don't know what I'm going to say. Because the mother in me is like, no, go to sleep. But the author in me is like, well, maybe.
And this is a great plot line for a chapter in something I'm writing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how old your kid is. My kids are now teenagers. I've got one of them that loves to scare. And they both love they both love anything dark and dismal, and horror movies, true crime documentaries, CSI, Criminal Minds, Law and Order, SVU. And I'm like, well, wow, okay, this is dark, but I'll watch it. Going back to the ghost thing, last year we were in Florida, and I always tell my kid, the one who scares me, and I've kind of gotten used to it, so it doesn't work as much anymore, but she, boo, and then posted to her friends on Snapchat. It's like, okay, whatever, dude. But and I told her, because she got me real good one time, I told her, I go, I'm going to get you back. By default, I'm smarter than you because I've got a whole bunch of years on you, kid. So I'm waiting, patiently waiting to get you back. And you are not going to like it, and you are going to be so angry at me, but you keep doing, you do you. You do you. You want to keep doing this to me at 6 in the freaking morning and making me mad. You keep going, dude. So,
but it's that anticipation, right? Like if you can
yes,
keep that anticipation going, I mean, that's
right.
that's the scariest. And again, I can't watch really scary movies. I am, again, big old chicken, like, too much of an active imagination. But it's the door that's just slowly creaking open, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily not necessarily even the reveal. It's that anticipation of what's going to happen. That is, I mean, as the reader or as an audience member, it terrifies me, and as the writer, I love it.
So my guess about you, and tell me if I'm correct, my guess will be that the blood and guts doesn't spook you out. It's everything leading up to it, or it doesn't even have to be blood and guts. You can watch something that might be like an Exorcist would creep you out way more than, I don't know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. I'm actually really bothered by like excessive violence.
Okay.
And yet I'm really fascinated I'm really interested in the sort of ripple effects outwards of violence, like excessive violence itself. That part of it really just, it doesn't necessarily scare me as so much as it just sort of like grosses me out, and
It's off-putting.
It's very off-putting, and I find it upsetting. No, it's the anticipation. It's the that sort of like everything is fine except it's not fine kind of thing. That I think is just really fun and delicious.
Yeah.
As long as it's not me alone in the house experience.
Well, and that leads me to the novel. It's your debut. It's Beneath the
Yes.
Stairs, and you delve into some really dark places, namely suicide, murder, and childhood trauma. So what inspired the creation of this plot, and what inspired you to go there?
Well, as I said, so the novel began in NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month.
Yeah.
And the whole goal of NaNoWriMo is to write 50,000 words in the course of over the month of November. And I thought I would try it. I didn't know what I was going to have at the end. I just wanted to see if I could hit that mark. And as soon as I started writing, the first picture that came to my mind was 4 girls, that sort of 13, 14-year-old age, right? Which was the age that I was when I went into this house. So you're right on the cusp, right? You're still a child, but you're sort of becoming a teenager. And they're standing outside this house, and they're trying to figure out whether they're going to go in or not. And so that was really the sort of beginning of the story for me. And again, sort of based on my own experience. But I ended up, and I don't fully know how it came into it, but I had a childhood friend who actually did suffer from very serious mental illness, and did take her own life. And that had happened. I mean, it had happened several years before, but I think I was still sort of sorting through what that was. We'd kind of grown apart, but then reconnected. And then, I got this phone call that this had happened, and it was so shocking and sad. And so that was filtered in there too. And so the book is dedicated to her. The book says, "For the real Abby, wherever you are." And that is actually who I'm talking about. So there's this, I guess I was exploring these childhood friendships, and how we can lose each other sometimes, but then sometimes we can also reconnect. How those old friends, they know you so well. And, you've been through, as you move into adulthood and through adulthood, and you go through so much, and how incredibly strong those connections can be. And so that was also sort of in the story, woven into the story as well. And in my book, she doesn't die, which is also, I think more positive. It's entirely a work of fiction, but of course everything is sort of feeds in. But I was really interested in exploring that idea of what is it to be haunted? Not just by like a ghost, but with this idea of the past and missed opportunities or regret and that sort of thing. And then thinking about what's in the future and how can you change that?
It sounds to me, and there's a theme with a lot of the novelists who I speak with, that that writing is like a form of therapy. Like you're working stuff out, and this is, you're taking something that was so tragic, and I can't imagine what you had gone through and what her family went through when that happened. Yet at the same time, you're taking this and you're kind of working. And even when you talk about the ending and what she did not do in the story, it's kind of your way of kind of working through these feelings. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, you do, there's a whole right from what you know and all of that sort of thing. And I don't think that means everything has to be like autobiographical or,
Sure.
but I do think that we are sort of in the world and taking things in, and writing is a really great way of sort of sorting through things. I mean, I am not, my protagonist, Claire, I'm not Claire. And yet there's parts of me that are, I guess, like Claire, but there is a way of kind of having your characters go through a journey where you can kind of by proxy, I guess, sort of, you can go through it with them. But yeah, so it's all definitely there. I mean, mental illness is something that I feel, I mean, it's something that I've sort of seen, and it's all around us, and yet there's still so much stigma connected to it. I don't want to use it as some kind of a plot device. I think it's deserving of so much more than that. But I also think that having it in stories can be helpful to help sort of normalize and to help have a conversation maybe about it. Again, this is not, I didn't write the book with this thought of like, oh, well, I'm going to make a statement about mental illness. That's not what I'm doing. But it's there, I guess, because it was there in this experience that I had. So it's coming through.
Yeah, well, and to use an analogy that we authors often hear, it's show, don't tell. So you're not telling us, you're showing us through this story, through these issues that your characters, Claire and Abby, are working through. You're showing us like, hey, maybe this is something that we should think about. And it's up to the reader to decide, well, what is there to think about? If there's some, maybe if there's someone who reads the book who says, oh, mental health, that's, poppycock. Maybe if there's someone, and hopefully I would like to hope that there are a lot of people who see mental health issues like this would pick up your book and would see that, you know what, it's not poppycock.
Yeah. And it's so much, I think, also about the all the people sort of around it. I mean, there's the person themselves. So in my book, there's Abby, but around Abby, right, there's her family, and so a family goes through so much when this sort of thing happens. And Claire is really involved with Abby's family. She's always been really drawn to Abby's family. And so thinking, and again, that was sort of something that I feel like I saw a little bit from this experience with one friend, and then also with other people I know who have dealt with mental illness and trauma and that sort of thing, right? It ripples out, and so yeah, that's all in there as part of it. But I think also people come to it, I mean, we all bring our own stuff to it, right? So for some that might really resonate, and for others it might be, I don't know, maybe it's there, but it's not the main.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of horror and mystery, is that you can have that monster, and that monster doesn't necessarily have to be a big green 4-legged beast that blows out fire. The monster could be, it could be the mental health issue, it could be addiction, it could be,
Right.
and I say
Right.
addiction because one of my favorite horror novels is about a flaming bicycle, and it's a metaphor for addiction.
Oh,
It's by
wow.
it's by Tyler Jones, called Criterium, and I'm like, this is beautiful, and it's not preachy or anything. It basically just shows. It doesn't tell you anything. It shows you. And
Right.
for anybody who doesn't know too much about addiction, whether maybe because they don't have anybody in their life that's addicted, and so it's not something that personally affects them, they see the metaphor, but they're along for a really wild ride.
Right.
So that's something that maybe somebody who doesn't who and I it would be astounding to me that there are a lot of people who are not affected by mental health in some way, shape, or form. But if there's someone
Yes.
who isn't by any chance that reads your book, that's going to be like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah. 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 And maybe it's a way to look at this. It's not as, I mean, I know it's a scary book, but maybe like having something like an issue, right? Like mental
Yeah.
health that if that's sitting on top of the book, then that's going to really turn some people off.
Sure.
But if it's there, but it's part of a stew of a whole lot of things, I think it maybe allows you to approach it and to think about it in a way that if it was like you don't want something that's right in your face, right?
Yes.
I'm not trying to broadcast a message here. This is not this is it, but it's there because it's part of our world.
So this is your debut novel, and with it will come questions from aspiring authors. I imagine you've got a whole press run, and so they're going to be people who are going to be curious, especially those who also partake in NaNoWriMo, who are going to be wondering, Jennifer, how many rejections did you get from agents, and how long did it take for you? Did you get the 50,000 words in, or did it maybe take a little? Oh, you did get them in. So
I did. I got the 50,000 words
questions
in, but the book was in no way finished.
Right. Yeah.
50,000 words.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and how long did it take for you to get from the rough draft to something that was even comfortable enough for you to present to an agent?
Oh
All the
my
questions.
goodness. So long. It took so long.
How long?
I wrote those 50, I think I even went over 50,000 words because I just sort of got this rhythm going. And so that was great. And then but I couldn't figure out an ending. It's a bit of a problem. And so my background is actually in playwriting. And so the book, this sort of like giant manuscript on my computer sat on my computer for a very long time, for years and years and years. And I would come back to it and I would reread it. And I'm like, yeah, there's something here. This is still holding me. And then another writing project would come up, a playwriting project would come up. And so I would completely turn myself over to that. And then I'd come back to it. So I was really, I can say that I've been with the book for about 10 years, except I haven't been really active. It was sort of sitting dormant, cooking away for the first number of those years. But then I came back to it and I had an idea for how I wanted to end it. And so then I made it through that. And that's when I started querying agents. I reached out to I think I reached out to, I don't know, 5 or 10 agents, but I had one who I really wanted to work with. And she, Victoria Marini, who is my agent, that's the end of the story. So she read the initial query. She said, yeah, I'd be interested in reading the full thing. So I sent her the full thing. And then she's like, not yet, but if you can do a revision of this, I would read it again. And I would say to anybody who is in the process of looking for an agent that when an agent says that, they mean it, and take them up on it. Because to have somebody willing to read something twice is actually, it shows that they actually are interested in your work, because they have, I can't even imagine their inboxes. Like, it's just like hundreds of people sending them writing at all times. So I did a revision and I resubmitted to her, and we ended up working together. And then the book went through many more revisions, rejections, and those are, I don't know if those get any easier. rejection sucks.
Nobody
But
likes rejections.
nobody likes rejection. And it's
I mean, anybody who says, oh yes, I pride myself on the number of times I've been told no, it's like, but do you really?
wow. It's really hard. It's hard. There's no way around it. It's just hard. But if you believe in what you're doing, then you have to just keep at it. And so I did believe, despite rejections, that I'm like, no, I believe in this. And at that point, and then I had my agent on my side and she believed in it too. And so I just kept working on it. And then it found a home, and it found a great home. It's perfect sort of place for it with Atria.
10 years that you had this manuscript just marinating,
very well marinated,
and vibing and slow cooking and smoking. You know, I'm in Texas, so we like to
smoke.
smoke.
So you're making me hungry.
But you've got this masterpiece brewing. Was there ever a moment during that 10-year span that that you thought, you know what, burn it to the ground? And what did you do to change your mind to keep going?
I'm trying to think. I mean, there were definitely, I think the bigger thing was I felt like I'm not going to be able to finish this. I can't figure out an ending. I'm just going to forever be in this place that's where I'm stuck. And it's a horrible feeling. I didn't talk about it for a really long time, but when I started to talk about it, then it became this thing where people were like, oh, how's your book? Are you still working on that? But it's sort of like your book in quotes.
Yeah.
And you start to feel like you're like the dreamer in the attic who's just like, no, honestly, it's real. And then when it gets, picked up by a publisher, then it suddenly becomes real. But I just kept going back to the story, and I couldn't let it go. Like, it was stuck in my head. And I do find, and I found this with writing plays as well, that if I have, you have a, you come up, you go for a walk and you get a great idea, and like, oh my gosh, it's the best idea ever. And I often feel like the test is time, because if that idea, if the next day and the next week, that idea is still interesting to you, then I think you actually have an idea. And otherwise you just have a sort of, it was an idea in the moment, but then the next day you're like, maybe not.
Yeah.
So it was that after all this time, there was still something compelling for me in it. I didn't know if there was going to be anything compelling for anybody else, but it was compelling to me.
Was it the style of writing, would you say, or was it just the plot in and of itself? Like, you know what, golly, this is an amazing plot, and I haven't seen this in a movie. I've never read this in a book, and I really feel like I'm onto something. Like, this is going to be gold. I just don't know how to end it.
I think it was plot and character, actually, really very much character. The characters are so real to me. I've lived with them for a really long time. I know them really well. And I wanted to find out how it ended for them. So they were what was really sort of pulling me, like, to me, like Claire and Abby to me are very, very real. And that maybe sounds like I'm not one of those people who, like, my characters just talk to me and they tell me how I wish, man, it would have been way faster if they would have talked to me. That didn't happen. but they are real. And so that, I think that's really what pulled me back. And, there's a lot of doubt. There's just so much, there's a lot of doubting that happens through this whole process. Even now, the thing exists, and I'm still, I can swing wildly from like, this is going to be awesome to, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible to, and I know a lot of other writers who do the same thing.
Yeah. I'm raising my hand. Yes. Yeah. Imposter syndrome is a real thing.
It's real. Yes.
I mean, I'd love to talk to, if I can go back in time and talk to Hemingway and Frost and ask those guys, like, hey, what did you do to get out of the rut? Because I know there's no way in hell that you did not go through what so many of us go through. Like, what did you do?
And I'm always so fat when the rare time when you can get a glimpse into another, I find writers' processes so interesting. I don't know if you've ever read Steinbeck kept a journal while he was writing I think it was while he was writing East of Eden, which is one of my favorite books. He kept a journal that's since been published. It's called Working Days. And I found it fascinating. Like I've read it as well. And it really is just a sort of like day to day of like, you know, wrote 1,000 words today, couldn't write anything today, I think I suck. But that's Steinbeck.
That could be, yeah. And that's pretty much all of us if you were to just take that one journal entry.
But it's really, it's really fascinating to just watch people. I mean, we tend to only see the success story, and to remember that for that every one success, there's probably like 10 fails.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you see the success, and nobody sees the mornings when Jennifer's got the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome, and who, you know, they don't see the days that, oh, you know, she just wanted to get 1,000 or 1,500 words out of the, you know, out of her mind and onto the keyboard and into the monitor. And, you know, they don't see, though, they see Jennifer signing books and hearing her on podcasts. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole process to it. But I'm glad you made it.
I am too. I am just beyond thrilled to be here. I feel really lucky to be here. And I hope that any sort of aspiring authors listening I would just say, keep going. Keep going.
Congratulations on the book.
You.
It is Beneath the Stairs by Jennifer Fawcett. Best place to get in touch with you?
The best place to get in touch with me is through Simon & Schuster.
Through Simon & Schuster, and get the book. It's going to be a wild ride. And congratulations again, Jennifer. Thank you so much for coming by the show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.